Senator Gutierrez, for what purpose do you rise?
I just had a question for the
Do you yield?
author.
Yes. Senator Gutierrez, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Senator. And I think that Senator Menendez covered the questions that we had talked about.
Yes.
My God, it seems like ages ago, last week.
It was just last week.
Yeah, in special session number 3. And here we are in special session number 4. And I think that my concern was this $40 million in overtime, and I think you've covered it. It may or may not go to this community, and we'll have an amendment to talk about that later. But as a chair of finance, chairwoman, I would ask you to, next time that you guys meet, to look into this tremendous overtime from DPS. I'm looking at an article, $68 million in overtime, including one officer that made over 160 some odd thousand, making more than Steve McCraw. And so it does seem like a tremendous amount, $68 million in overtime by this agency. Does that not surprise you to be an outrageous amount of money?
I'll say this, Senator Gutierrez. We wish we had more DPS troopers, unfortunately, and we are creating academies and getting them trained and out there as quickly as we can, but we can't meet the needs. So there is a necessity for troopers to work overtime to meet the law enforcement needs that we have. And I think it's important, you've brought this up, that we publicly discuss that. So how much do troopers make in overtime for Operation Lone Star? It ranges from $45.23 for a trooper to $67.36 for a senior trooper. This is their time and a half rate. They are scheduled to work 50 hours per week. We passed that in I think we've either done it in legislation or through rider for several sessions. So they work a total of 520 hours per year. When deployed to Operation Lone Star, they work 84 hours per week. 84 hours for the week that they're deployed, 7 days, 12 hours. This is the most that we schedule a trooper during a week. They could get called out for a crash or make an arrest at the end of their shift, causing them to work a few extra hours. But they go down there for a week and they work 84 hours. So do they get paid for their time? It's stressful, it's dangerous, and they volunteer for the duty, so yes, we pay them.
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, last year we paid $180 million in overtime to DPS from March 21 to February 22. Are you aware of that?
I knew it was a significant amount of money. It's a number that I am comfortable with for the work that they do.
Well, as the director of this agency who described the Uvalde incident as an abject failure, including failure on his agency, I would suggest that we begin to call Steve McCraw to task on this overtime. And so I'm not going to tell you how to do your job, but as far as Steve McCraw is concerned, it is disturbing to me that the Public Safety Commission, after all of that failure that we had last year, would give that man a $46,000 raise without our approval. And so, as you know, I will continue to look into the Department of Public Safety, because they have become an agency that is nothing more than a political hack for this governor. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Huffman has moved suspension of the regular order of business on SB 3. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez.
There being 18 ayes and 10 nays, the regular order of business is suspended. Members, there is an amendment. Nope. The chair lays out on second reading SB 3.
Senate Bill 3, relating to an appropriation to provide funding for the construction, operation, and maintenance of border barrier infrastructure and border security operations.
Members, there is an amendment. The following amendment, the secretary will read the amendment.
Floor amendment number 1 by Gutierrez and Johnson.
Senator Gutierrez, you're recognized from your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members. This amendment, I imagine it'll probably go nowhere, but it's noteworthy. We saw this last week when we had this bill come up in the third special session, and now we're here back in the fourth. This was Senator Johnson's amendment, specifically asking to strike the language of Colony Ridge. and I think that it is important as we talk about this community, that DPS, along with that sheriff's office, did a report and compared apples to apples, similarly sized communities, and actually found less crime in Colony Ridge. We now know from that committee, because I wanted to ask myself, as Representative Jay Dean asked in the House, why are we here? I wanted to ask myself, how did this begin? And as we researched this, we found that a man named Todd Bensman, who worked for the Department of Public Safety, wrote a book called Overrun. Now it's a bestseller. He tweeted Senator Menendez. He said, this Colony Ridge area is a no-go zone. Shouldn't go there. It's dangerous. He said it was like so many things, he said in his tweet. Our governor retweets it. Our governor goes on and sends in the troops to something based on a tweet, which we now know there is no more crime in this community than any other, members. And so I think that it is a disgrace that we sit here as stewards of this money and tell the taxpayers of Texas that we're going to blow $40 million of their money on some hoax that was created by the governor of this state. It was created by one man who then the governor enunciated on his soapbox and said, this place is dangerous. You might ask yourself why I'm so upset about this. This place, we had a hearing in Senator Betancourt's committee in the third special session where we debunked it all. This is a community of Mexican immigrants. This is a community of Mexican U.S. citizens. This is a community of Mexican United States residents. And it's a community of immigrants from across this country. And all of you sit here. You sit here and you disgrace this country. You disgrace this country with language like this. You disgrace this country with language like this.
Senator, thank you.
And so my amendment asks you to strike any language about Colony Ridge because it is a hoax. It is a hoax that this governor tweeted about. That's my amendment.
Sarah Huffman, you recognize on the amendment.
Yes, thank you, members. I will be opposing the amendment. As I stated, the language of the bill gives great flexibility on how the money is to be used. There have been expenses already incurred at Colony Ridge, and I trust that the Department of Public Safety and the governor of the state of Texas will appropriately use the funds that this body appropriates for it. And so I would oppose the amendment. Thank you.
Members, the motion is on the adoption of amendment number 1. The secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell.